Hello, and welcome to the Classic Land Cruisers podcast. I'm Dan, your host. You can find me on Instagram at FJ40_UMA_Smurf or on I Hate Mud at Mountain Biker. You can find the podcast on Instagram by searching Classic Land Cruisers. Remember to go to reefmonkey.com to get your Classic Land Cruiser podcast merch. Bring your adventure home with inlowgear.com, your source for custom Land Cruiser apparel and merchandise, where adventure becomes art, designed for the road. This episode was brought to you in part by Redline Land Cruisers, save your F, by Manafree, your one-stop shop for Land Cruiser parts and service, by Valley Hybrids and Terrain Tamer North America.
Okay, so welcome to this episode of the Classic Land Cruisers podcast. With me today is Ben, not Wrong Way, Project Wrong Way Ben, but Ben, what's your last name?
Ellsworth.
Ben Ellsworth. I think I knew that, and I had a brain for it. But I
No
saw
worries.
his White 80 series on Instagram and some of the adventures that he goes in. And I was like, you know what? I want to talk to him some more. So tell us a little bit more about yourself and how you got into Classic Land.
Yeah, so I kind of had I'd say it started obviously just the gearhead in me kind of drew me to a variety of different cars from the get-go. In high school I was kind of into Hondas and Rice burners, and developed into getting on the track and going out and racing. I lived in California at the time. Or I lived in California later once I got into racing. I had an S2000, and I got blown out of just spending so much every single track event to go, wheels, tires, the what you're paying to get on track and all that. But I
Yeah.
still like being out, and my girlfriend at the time, who's now my wife, she would come with me. She had a lot of fun. And I just had a really good time, being in the automotive community just in general. But obviously, it was just hard. And then, you know, I kind of transitioned into um, getting into like camping and stuff, and it just was a natural progression that, a few of my buddies and we got into, I guess, overlanding. I actually had an Xterra. That was like my first introduction to like a 4x4. It was one of those. I think it was a second gen Xterra. I can't remember the year. It was a great little rig. Um, but it was tiny. It had, IFS, and it was just really small and underpowered. Like I thought that was underpowered, but I got into a 80 series, and that's what I, obviously really learned what underpowered is. But yeah, so I got into an Xterra, and me and like two of my buddies, we got into just going out into like I remember one of our first trips was up to Hatchet or the Coyote Flats up in like Central California area, southern central-ish. Uh, and we just kind of explored up there, and it was a ton of fun. And my buddy had a Forerunner, I think a second or a third gen Forerunner. And then I had another buddy, he had a Jeep Trailhawk at the time, and we all just kind of found we pushed those trucks a little further than they probably needed to go at that time, but it was a lot of fun, and we were all just kind of hooked on it. And we all kind of came back with a plan that we were just gonna sort of make trips like habitual and start doing those, every month if we could. We lived
Yeah.
pretty close at the time, so it was easier. Now, one of us lives in Tennessee. I live in Tennessee here. One of my buddies lives in Texas, and then another buddy lives in Illinois. And so we're a little bit spread out further. But obviously, I think you might have seen that last Colorado trip I went on. But my buddy
Yeah.
from Texas, Derek, he hopped on the trip with us, and so we're trying to make it a yearly thing now that we get back into it. And so we're going to Colorado this year as well. But yeah, to go back to it, it was just kind of a natural progression from that Xterra. I was like, man, I want something a little bit more capable, and started, diving into uh, some real 4x4s, and obviously Toyotas came up, and I saw Tacomas and 4Runners, and I've always just been attracted to older cars,
Yeah.
and specifically like the 90s. I think the 90s is where it was like the perfect era of cars. I was always like in high school, I was always into the like, EG and EK hatches, and the 90s era just kind of spoke to me. So naturally I started looking at 80 series, and I pulled the trigger on one. Obviously this one was out in Texas. I was living in California at the time. It was out in Texas. The guy who owned it uh, inherited it from his father, and his father was a Toyota technician in Texas and had bought this brand new at the dealership, and had serviced it its whole life there. Yeah, so it had a stack of a stack of service records that was thicker than my Bible. It was pretty awesome to receive that. And it was bone stock when I got it. There was nothing done to it. It's not triple locked or
Yeah.
anything fancy. It's actually it had a lunchbox locker in the rear, but that's about it. So pretty much everything that's done to it now I've done. And it's just been kind of a slow, methodical progression of like figuring out what needs to be upgraded, which is not a ton on the 80, but you can kind of go from there. And yeah, it's been a lot of fun.
So, what are the upgrades that you've actually done on it? Uh, so, does it still have the lunchbox locker, or?
Yeah, so I'm actually going through probably the biggest transition on this is the engine swap that I'm working on it right now. I'm going to go to a Mercedes, an OM 606 turbo diesel.
Okay.
And so I pulled one of those out of a 98, again, like stuck with the 90s. If anything tells you, like, I love the simplicity of older rigs. So it's an all mechanical motor. You need a start, and that's about it. There's no
Yeah.
ECU to it. You need power to the starter, and that's it. So there's no ECU. It's a mechanical injection pump. Nothing fancy about it, but it's just reliable. It runs. It's all function over form. But
Yeah.
as far as what I've done to it so far, yeah, it's still got the lunchbox locker in it. There's no locker up front. There's just been I've done a lift. So I have a Dobinson's lift on it. It's about a 2-inch lift. I got an ARB front bumper. My rear bumper was custom built. I built that from scratch. I'm sort of embarrassed to say I don't have sliders on it yet. I have lights before sliders, which is not good. And I have a few dents to show for it, but that's what I get. So that's always just been on the pecking order just to get, and I just haven't gotten around to it. Um, Gamma Vidi, I don't know if you're familiar with them, but Gamma Vidi hopped on as a sponsor actually after I got the rack. So they've just been sort of working. We've been working together, kind of helping develop some of their parts. But their roof rack is like probably one of my favorite mods that I've done to the truck. It's just such a solid. I had a roof rack 10 up there for a while, and then I pulled that off, and now I have like Max Tracks, a Pelican case with some recovery gear in it. My awning's up there. I have their flip out mount for my awning, so it while you're driving, it's flipped up on top of your rack. But then when you go to camp and you want to, deploy it, you turn it
Yeah.
and flip it back, and it's pretty cool. It's a neat system. Um, what else? A lot of there's just a lot of little things here and there. I got a Nardi steering wheel on the inside just because again that's old and I like it and I think it looks retro. Um,
Yeah.
but yeah, so just a lot of little things here and there. Nothing too crazy. I kind of again just like the simplicity of everything. If
Yeah.
I've taken inspiration from anybody's build, it's been one of the guys off 4 Wheel Drive 24/7. I don't know if you watch that show.
Yeah.
Shawno and his 80 series Sooty, I've kind of taken after a little bit of his. I think like a lot of us in
Yeah.
the States have. I know a lot of my buddies definitely we look at the stuff that they have over there and I'm super jealous, but yeah.
Yeah. Those uh those guys from 4 Wheel Drive 24/7, they crack me up because Sean is like a big Toyota guy, and Graham is like this Nissan guy,
Yeah, yeah,
and
Isuzus too. Yeah,
and
Yeah, there's
it's
always that rivalry.
it's just kind of funny to see them uh, kind of badmouth each other. And uh, one thing that's kind of nice about the going back to how you like everything from the 90s, the 90s kind of had that perfect mix of style and function and introductory luxury. Um, so yeah, the 80 series was still being built in the 90s, or that was when it was mainly popular, was in the 90s. Um, and it was still purpose built. It still had that function, but and it still had its own style and its own personality, and it's not like these mass produced
Yeah, absolutely.
vehicles now.
Last of the solid front axle. I forget the quote um Mr. Toyota had said, but he said it was the greatest generation of Land Cruiser just because of how balanced it was. Essentially, what you're saying, it was just what they did. They had the luxury, they had the function, they had the form, they had everything. I think that that's very true about this one.
Yeah, I always say that my next Land Cruiser is going to be an 80 series.
Yeah, I remember you said that in one of the last podcasts I was listening to. You'd said that that's next on the chopping block.
Uh, but I have a big limitation of space. Um,
Yeah,
I have the two-car garage, which is normally my Land Cruiser and my wife's Highlander in there, and then the kids get to park their Forerunners outside on the driveway or on the street. And now that I have this Tundra, I didn't want a long bed truck, um,
yeah, but they're functional.
but it is functional. And when I was having to tow the Land Cruiser up an hour and a half, 2 hours up the road to Higgy's off road, it towed it like a beast. I didn't even really feel the Land Cruiser back there. And every so often, I would look in my mirror and I would see my Land Cruiser and completely forget that I had the Land Cruiser back there. And I'd be like, "Who is this guy? And why is he riding my ass like this?" And I'm like, "Oh
Yeah,
wait, that's
yeah,
my Land
that's
Cruiser's."
me. Yeah, yeah, exactly. Yeah,
uh,
that's one thing I wish my 80 did a little bit better after doing the lift on this. Obviously, it's geared towards, being off road, but I've hooked my boat up and I got a little bit bigger of a boat. But you can definitely feel it on the back of this. And obviously, I don't know if you've ever driven an 80 series, but they are severely underpowered once you do any sort of lift or wheels and tires to it. They're just underpowered as it is. Especially mine's got
yeah,
311,000 miles on it, so she's pretty tired. So again, looking forward to that diesel getting in here and making a little bit more serious power.
yeah. Now, are you going to have it turboed or is it just going to be a straight diesel?
Yeah, no, so it's an inline six turbo diesel. It came the one that I got is the later generation, so it came turboed. So it's
Okay.
got forged internals from factory. I took the head off. I had it all machined and gone through. The bottom end I left together just because once I took it apart, you could still see cross hatching. They're notorious for just being really stout motors, as most diesels
Yeah.
are. And then I got my injection pump actually from somebody overseas. They obviously these diesels in the States are not as big as they are overseas and in Europe specifically, and so they have a big
Yeah.
aftermarket over there. And so I got my injection pump over from somebody in Spain, and he tuned it pretty well, and so I've got it in the garage now, and it's running on the stand, and it's pretty wicked. So I'm pretty excited. We actually just moved to a new place, and now I have a shop that I can work on the truck in. And so once we
Yeah.
get settled in, I can tear the Land Cruiser apart and start working on that swap.
Yeah. So, what does your wife think about this new Land Cruiser addiction?
She, you know what? I'd say like when it started, it was right before COVID is when I got my 80 series, and she came camping with me like once or twice, and she thought it was cool or whatever. She's not huge into like the whole off-roading scene, so she wasn't like crazy about that. But it's always funny, like through the whole time that we've had this, we'll go out and, like to her in the beginning, it was like, this thing's like a 90s shit box, pardon my French, but like it's just a 90, like what, it's an old Toyota, who cares? And
Yeah.
we'd pull up to a light somewhere and some guy in like a nice, Range Rover or something, like he'd know what it was. He's like, "Man, that's a sweet Land Cruiser," like I'm sure you get that in yours the same thing. People recognize them and they're iconic. And so she's always, it's funny. Like we were down in Nashville a couple weeks ago for something I can't remember, and I pulled up to a light, and right across the thing, some guy was like pulling his phone out and like taking pictures and stuff. And she's like, I just don't get it. It's funny to see like an old truck like this, get so much attention here. And but she's supportive of it. She understands. I'm a police officer. Actually, I'm the second Nashville police officer that you've had on your podcast,
That's
which is
right. I uh,
funny. Yeah,
Fabian is
yeah.
in from Nashville too. So
Yeah, we connected after that. That was funny. I sent him a DM. We connected. We've been talking a little bit, but yeah, like I was saying, I'm a police officer, so she understands that, like a good stress relief, being at home is something like I've always had, is working on cars and working on my truck. And my son just absolutely loves riding in daddy's truck, as he says. And so um we take him, camping every once in a while, and she has a good time with that. So she's supportive. She gets it.
yeah. So how often would you say you go out camping in your 80s?
Man, I try to go as much as possible. It's really dependent on my schedule. My schedule recently has been pretty hectic, just here and there. There's overtime that we got to work. I'm training a new dog. I just got on K9, so I'm working there.
Okay.
Um, and but like I try to get out at least, once every 2 months or something like that at the least. If I can do more, that's awesome. I just went to an event out at this Brushy Mountain State Penitentiary out here in Tennessee. It was an overland, or southeast overland camping event. They got a long name, but it's held at a state penitentiary, and it's a super cool event. And they have, tons and tons of rigs come out, and you can go tour the prison there. And I got a bunch of buddies from my department that come out, and some friends that aren't on the department, and we had just a really, really good crew this year. So that's probably one of my favorite events I get to look forward to every year.
Yeah. Um, Now you uh, from the pictures that you sent me, it looks like you have your 80 kind of set up for rock landing. You can do some rock crawling. You can get the wheels and tires flexed out and your frame twisted up, and
Yeah.
but it's meant for overlanding. And what size tires are you running on that?
So I have 35s on it right now.
Okay.
And again, going back to just like kind of uh building this off of a tried and proved, platform. Sean's 80 series, I've sort of studied his builds over the time, and he's never gone really over a 2.5 inch lift, and then 35s and just lockers and some
Yeah.
armor. And the stuff that those guys do is just, out of this world. It's crazy.
Yeah.
So I feel like if you can do it with that kind of stuff. Like I was on 33s for the longest time, and I really didn't have that much of an issue. But once you go to a little bit bigger of a lift, it kind of looks goofy being on small tires, and you can run a bigger tire,
Yeah.
and it's better, off-roading, obviously. Um,
Yeah.
so yeah, right now we're on 35s. I don't have plans to go to 37s or anything, I don't think, especially with a 2 inch lift. I might I'm on 16-inch wheels right now. So I got a lot of meat, but
Yeah.
I might go to 17-inch wheels with some bead locks, and be able to take that PSI even further down if I want to.
Yeah. Well, the one thing with like Sean and uh, those guys from Australia is they can't do a lot of modifications to their trucks
Yeah,
because
yeah,
everything has
absolutely.
to kind of go through a re-engineering process, and the government keeps
Yeah,
tabs on that. And the people that I've talked to from Australia, they're like, we would love to come up to the United States and get in some of those vehicles that you guys have no restrictions on, because
Yeah.
we can do a 10-inch lift in 45-inch or 46-inch tires or
Yeah.
44s or whatever, and one
Yeah.
ton axles and
Yeah.
all this other
Yeah.
stuff. And uh, so they're like, yeah, if we go more than a 2-inch lift, we have to go get it re-engineered and
Yeah.
all this other stuff. And so they kind of take their vehicles to the max that they can actually take them without everything getting in the way. Um,
Yeah,
so
absolutely. I love that mentality too, doing more with less. I think that's pretty cool.
yeah, and that kind of goes back to like these old Land Cruisers. I mean, you're doing the same stuff, but with less technology and uh, and everything else. And so you're doing more with less, but you're getting it accomplished still, which is
Absolutely.
good. So, what's been like one of your fondest memories that you've had in your 80 series?
Um, I guess two come to mind. One is this last year doing this Colorado trip. That was amazing. That was really cool. We uh we went out there for 10 days. We did 2 days on the front end just getting out there. So we had about 7-ish days, 6-ish, 7-ish days of actual wheeling. And I've always wanted to go to Colorado, and it just never kind of came around. But again, those two buddies that I talked about earlier, we've talked about, after we moved, we're like, man, we gotta get a yearly trip together, just like lay everything out on the schedule and just like put it down and get out there. And so one of them was able to make it, and the other guy, Chuck, wasn't able to make it. But we got our dates this year. We'll both be able to do it. So hopefully this year tops it. But man, last year was amazing. We went during fall, so the colors were just insane.
Oh, I
It
can
was
only
it was
imagine.
just complete, yeah, completely out of this world. I have everything on my story, and like a lot of those, I like. I don't like to edit my pictures too much, but it almost looked like they were fake when I was going through and editing them, because it was like these colors are just insane. Like we talked to some of the locals, and they're like, "You guys picked the like best week of the whole year to be here." Um, so we did Black Bear Pass. That was probably uh, that was a bucket list trail that I was so stoked to go on. And but I was also a little bit nervous just because my wife promised to come, haunt me if I did anything wrong on that trail and ended up dying. She's like, I'm gonna come find you and I'm gonna haunt you for doing some. So I told her, I told her, I said, this will be like kind of like a one and done deal. I'll do Black Bear, and then I'll cool it on that. So I don't think I'll probably do that one again, unless she gives me the okay. She was nice enough to let me do it the first time. So
Yeah.
and then I'd say the other most the probably the most fond memory that I have in this, which has nothing to do with overlanding or camping or four wheeling at all, was driving to the duck blind to propose to my wife.
Oh,
And
nice.
it was like a couple weeks after I got this truck. I drove it back from Texas, and um, it was I kind of did it on a whim, not the proposal on a whim, but I was like, let's just take the 80 and we'll go, drive a couple hours after work one day, and we went for a sunset hunt, and it was like in the middle of like California summer. There's not a duck like even close to where we were. We didn't see anything, but I was like, I want to propose to her in a duck blind. So we drove out there, and yeah, I had the ring in my pocket the whole time, and I just remember listening to music on the way up there, having a good time. And I have a picture of her, taking a picture of her hand in the 80. And so yeah, that'll forever be a cemented memory in this rig.
Yeah. So, when you bought your 80, how much time did you spend actually looking at the vehicle in person before you decided to hand over the cash and drive it back to California? Was it fly in sight
Not
unseen with
honest.
the cash?
Yeah, it was kind of that was actually that was very much on a whim. So I was actually my brother-in-law had some property up in Tehachapi up in the mountains, and we were again those two buddies I was with, we were camping, and one of them had mentioned, he's like, man, like 80 series are really cool. And I was like, yeah, I love those. And so I like hopped on Facebook Marketplace, and I don't know how it came up on my algorithm, but this came up and it was in I can't even remember the town in Texas. It was so small. But it came up and I messaged the guy, and it was right before COVID, so I got it for a little bit better price than what they ended up going for a couple months after. And I messaged the guy, and I'm notorious for going on Facebook and like lowballing people, and if they accept it, I'm like, dang, now I gotta they called my bluff. I gotta go get it now. And I didn't necessarily do it with this, but the story behind it with the guy owning it or having it for through his dad, and his dad had it new, and all the paperwork and stuff. I knew it was going to be a solid rig, and so I offered the guy, I forget what I offered him, and we settled on a price. And I was working a private security job at the time, so we were working like long shift hours, and I ended up going straight from like a 14-hour shift or 12-hour shift or whatever it was to taking an Uber to the airport and getting on a plane flying to Podunk, Texas. And when I hopped in the guy picked me up in this at the airport, and he's like, "Yeah, you just got to drive me home, and you know, we'll we'll do the handoff there." And I was like, "All right." And so we drove probably like 15, 20 minutes to his house. I got out, I looked around it. There was not a speck of rust on it. It was as clean as he said it was. I think there was like a crack in the dash that I didn't know about that is still super tiny, but that was like the biggest thing I could point out about it. Interior had just been like the seats had been recovered. He just did I forget if who what the company was, but they were like a really nice, and they're still a really nice interior. If anything, I've been the one to beat it up a little bit. And yeah, I gave him the cash, and I started I don't know, it was like a 10-hour, 11-hour drive home, and I went literally straight home. I slept for like 3 hours, and then I drove right back to my shift to go to my next one because I had just gone through my weekend essentially. And I remember going out to the truck every couple hours just to kind of like peek at it and look at it. And the guys I was working with were laughing about it because they thought, again, it was just an old 90s Toyota that nobody, if you don't know about it, you're just
Yeah,
like, looks like an old 4Runner or something.
yeah. Uh, it's kind of funny that you say that. My daughter was because she just bought a third gen, two-wheel drive third gen 4Runner, and she's going to
Okay.
the local community college right now. And she like she texted me one day. She's like, "Look at this cool 4Runner that I parked next to." And I looked at it. I'm like, "Babe, that's an 80 series Land Cruiser. It's awesome. And I'm glad you parked next to it, and I'm glad you got the picture of it. But that's an 80 series
Yeah.
Land Cruiser."
Yeah. That's funny. That's
But
funny.
yeah, and she's like turned her whole online personality into this 4Runner, and it's awesome because I remember
That's awesome.
when I got my first 4Runner, I like my whole personality was this 4Runner and everything, and this is all well before social media. So and
That's cool.
I think
Is she
digital
working on it?
cameras, she it's kind of funny because I'm always like, hey, we need to do an oil change on your car. We don't have the records of when it was done. We don't know how many miles it's been since you've done it, since an oil change has been done. We need to do an oil change on your car. She's like, but my car payment's due this month or due this next paycheck, and the insurance is due this next paycheck, and it's just really tight. I'm like, we need to do an oil change on your truck, and she's like, but it, I just giving me all these excuses, and then she tells her mom, she's like, on my next paycheck, I want to get my nails done, and we both can get pedicures. I'm like, looking at her, I'm just like,
You need an oil
really?
change.
You need an oil change. And then the second gen Forerunner that we got for my son, my daughter and I had actually looked at the second gen Forerunner first, and I said, I'm like, this second gen Forerunner is not the one for you. And she's like, why? I'm like, well, one, I would be a little bit jealous because mine was a second gen, and it just
Yeah,
like as soon as I opened up the door, I got into it, and I'm like, this feels exactly like my second gen Forerunner. Oh my goodness! And then
that's cool.
so I'm like, the second gen is honestly, it's more suitable for your brother because it's a tinker ride. Uh, if we get this one, there's things that are gonna need to be tinkered on it and all this other stuff. So, unless you're wanting to tinker on it, not the one for you. And
Yeah.
then she saw another one. We went and looked at it, and ended up being the one that she bought. It was much nicer for her. And then my son's like, "Well, what about me? My car's a piece of crap." And he was driving my Avalon at the time, and the Avalon that I bought was never meant to be a permanent fix. For when my motor originally went down in my Land Cruiser, um, but it ended up being a permanent fix. And so he's like, I I can't go anywhere in this because it always breaks down, and it had this like weird electrical glitch that it would like all the dash lights would shut off and nothing would work, and then it would die, or it would just it would flicker on and off, and then like reset all the radio stations and all this other stuff. And he's like,
Oh man, those are the
and
worst. Electrical gremlins are the worst.
yeah, and then I was like, well, let's look at. I've already put in an offer on this second gen Forerunner, so let's go look at it again. He liked it, and we ended up getting it. We got both of them for really good deals. My daughter's third gen, we got it for like $4,000. The the second gen, we got it for like $3,400.
Nice. Yeah.
For being a '93, it actually has really low miles, and so yeah. And now my Land Cruiser's broken down again, and uh, yeah,
That's how it goes. It's a vicious cycle.
yeah. And but my son, he's a tinker. He's like, I'm not planning on going to college. I just want to get out and start working with my hands. And I'm like, all right. And he'll come home and he'll start tinkering around with it, and he just put an amp in it and a subwoofer in it. He's almost a 17-year-old kid. That's what
That
17-year-old
you
kids
got
want to do is
you
put sound
absolutely.
systems.
I remember slapping the biggest Alpine Type R or Type T or whatever it was back in my little Civic shit box. It was like blowing out the windows in that thing. But that's what you start at. You just as long as you're busy working on a car, I think that's cool.
Yeah, and he's like, Dad, how do I wire up this amp? I'm like, I never got into the amps and subs and everything else
Yeah,
because I never had a car worth putting a stereo system in it.
yeah.
And the car that I always drove was your grandpa's truck. So it's not like I could modify grandpa's truck to
Throwing a sub
put
in
a,
Grandpa's truck. I like
yeah.
it. I don't think you'd be happy
Yeah.
about that. That's funny.
Yeah. So how often do you kind of going back to you when you're driving around, people are like taking pictures of your Land Cruiser and whatnot. How often would you say that people uh, come up and approach you when you're driving around?
Uh, honestly, it's more just like getting thumbs up as you're driving around. I'm sure like every 80 series or 60s or especially 40 series. I feel like I mean I always I'm always fanboying over somebody in a 40 series that's like driving it around. I always think that's cool because nobody if you're in like an 80 series or older, you probably know what you have. I
Yeah.
feel like once you get to an 80 series and then a little bit newer, you start like seeing the drivers that are like, they don't even really know that it's, or maybe they do know it's a Land Cruiser, they just don't know like, you know, the lore behind it or just like the history behind Land Cruisers and what they've done and all that stuff. But I feel like 80 is kind of like the in between ground. But if you drive a 60, like 100%, you know what it is. If you drive a 40, obviously you know what it is.
Yeah.
You know, so I think that seeing people around town, especially other, like, it's not the Jeep Wave thing, but you see somebody in another nice Land Cruiser, you kind of give the nod or whatever. It happens every once in a while.
Yeah.
But I mean, mine by far is no means clean. Like, it's got dents in it, it's got scratches. I don't wash it. Like, it is 100% a utilitarian vehicle. Like, it's not a show pony by any means. So every once in a while we'll pull up to, especially in California, like there were some really, really nice rigs out there. But I remember pulling up to a light and somebody had, this is going to go against exactly what I just said, but I pulled up next to somebody who had a 40 series and it was done by, I think Icon is the company. They're like the super
Okay. Yeah.
bougie. Uh,
Yeah.
I waved at him. I said, "Hey, nice Land Cruiser." He's like, "Okay," and like kind of like brushed it off. I was like, "All right, dude. Like maybe you don't know it. Like maybe you just bought that because you thought it was cool or something. You don't know, you know." But yeah, I think I don't know. It's hit or miss. A lot of people call it a
Yeah.
forerunner. Like like your daughter, like same thing. They're like, "Hey, sweet forerunner" or something like that. So, but yeah,
I would much rather have somebody confuse if I had an 80 series, I'd much rather have somebody confuse an 80 series for a Forerunner than them confuse my 40 series with a Jeep.
yeah. In all fairness though, like the 40 series, like the BJs back in the day, they were I mean, that was like the thing is they were created for that military project, just like the old Jeeps were and stuff. I think they're pretty much the exact same. So I understand how I every once in a while I'm sort of ashamed to say this, but every once in a while I'll catch a glimpse of like an old 40 series and I'll look at it and I'm like, is that a Jeep or is that and then I'll be like, see, the front grille or something will give it away, or
Yeah.
if the roof is, not the iconic white, or whatever. It's usually the older ones that
Yeah.
are pretty patinaed, but I think those are the coolest ones, man. Those I like the
Yeah.
old beat up ones.
Yeah. My 40, it actually, when I bought it, it had, and I will admit this, it had a beautiful patina. And my wife is
Yeah.
always like, you, before I painted it, she's like, you need to just keep the patina because it looks better. And I'm like, my vision has always been blue and white. It's always I and I didn't realize this, but the medium blue for the 40 series was only like the last 2 years that the 40 series was being made. I'm just like, I've always wanted a blue 40 series. I'm like, well, the next 40 series I get, I'll make sure I keep the patina. And she
Yeah.
just kind of rolls her eyes like, you're not getting another one.
Yeah, my wife.
And
I've been slowly talking to my wife into. She drives a GX, and so she's kind of getting into. I always tell her it's in every other part of the world that's branded as a Land Cruiser. So I tell her she drives a Land Cruiser every once in a while, but she's been big into like the old Broncos. She really wants like a pastel
yeah,
yellow one. And so every once in a while, the a yellow 40 series come up on Facebook Marketplace, and I'll do my classic, lowballing the guy just to see if he'll bite on it. And I haven't gotten anybody to bite, but she's always like, "Man, that thing's so sweet." So hopefully one day I can find one of those like patinaed yellow uh
yeah.
40 series. I think that would be cool.
Well, my wife, if she was to get an off-road vehicle, she wants like the Land Rover Defender 90 or the 110, not the Series
Oh yeah,
2, but a little
yeah,
bit
those are sweet.
newer than that, but like the really square ones. And
Absolutely.
uh, I'm like, you won't be able to ever drive it. And she's like, why? I'm like, because I've never seen one of those Land Rover Defenders in an automatic transmission. They all have manual
Oh yeah,
transmissions. And she's
yeah,
like,
yeah.
well, I can learn. I'm like, I tried to teach you how to drive a manual transmission in my Forerunner, and you burned up the clutch.
That's funny. I taught my wife how to drive stick on my race car, my S2000. It had a clutch that was about this long, and she picked it up. I had to put a pillow in the seat so she was, tall enough to reach the pedals. But she learned in it, and I don't even think I had a front seat in it at the time, on the passenger side. So I was sitting on the floor. We were just driving around the neighborhood, and she learned on that. That was a lot of fun.
Yeah. Um, so if you could have anybody riding shotgun with you, uh, who would it be? It could be historical, it could be current, it could be fictional.
Man, I this is gonna sound uh a little crazy because it'd be hard to do, but Jesus Christ, I'd love to have him with me. That'd be cool. Take him on a camping trip and just talk. I was watching something the other day and it was like, would you rather have $2 million or dinner with Jesus? And I was like, that's a no brainer. Um, and I it ended up going in my mind. Obviously, everything kind of circles around, but I was like, it'd be cool to go on a camping trip with Jesus. So I was like, that question you just asked, I was like, that'd probably be my answer.
You know, it if and not to sound too sacrilegious or anything, but if you were to take Jesus on a camping trip, at least you know you'd have fish to eat because
Yeah, yeah, absolutely, absolutely. Probably be have a little bit of wine, have a little fish, and some bread, and we'd be good.
you know that would be awesome. Yeah, and I'm a big believer in mountain therapy and going out to the mountains. And in all honesty, when I go up to the mountains and I can just kind of decompress, I
Yeah,
find that
absolutely.
I'm closer to Jesus and closer to God and everything up in the mountains than a lot of times around people who I Jesus said it. There's going to be a lot of people who say that they're Christians but aren't really Christians. They say that they follow me, but if you look at them, they're not really following me. So,
Yeah,
and yeah,
absolutely.
I think that would be amazing to experience. And like I
Absolutely. I
said,
think I
go
think
ahead.
overlanding and camping and just being out in nature has definitely brought me closer to Christ. I think going out and I mean, I keep going back to this Colorado trip, but man, the views out there were just incredible, and I mean, so is California. That you go up into the mountains out there, but some of these passes that you went over in Colorado is just like you get to see his creation, and just you know it blows my mind sometimes, just the stuff that's out there. And it's cool when you get to go explore it and go find it and find your
Yeah,
your crew that you get to go do it with. And it's just a lot of fun. And I'm looking forward to having my son with me too and doing it with my son, because I think he's already we're stacking wood. I got home today from work, and um we had some wood to stack, and so he rode out into the field with me on my dirt bike, and we stacked wood for an hour. So he loves being outside, so I know he's gonna love going camping and being out. So he's 2 right now, but I'm excited to go on these bigger trips with him and sort of introduce him to it, and eventually pass off the keys to this to him.
yeah. So if you were to get another Land Cruiser, which one would you get?
I'll tell you what, the one that's on my bucket list and that I'm gonna try as hard as I can to make happen is importing a 70 series. That is my like absolute dream truck, is a 70 series Troopy. Um, and it's becoming more and more doable just because of the 25-year rule, being able to get them into the States. It's getting a little bit easier. But I really like the newer body styles, and I'm seeing them pop up more and more now, where people are just importing the bodies of them and they're just swapping them onto USDM frames. So a lot of people are throwing them on like 80 series frames. I think Mike Glover threw his on a 60 series frame. I could be
Yeah.
wrong. It might be another 80 series, but like that rig is insane. That thing's so cool. But yeah, it would definitely be a like a 79 or the later 70. I don't know the numerical, but I think it's a 79 series or a 70 series Troopy.
Yeah. Um, we actually, because I'm a fleet mechanic for a local law enforcement agency, and we
Okay.
actually have an up armored 70 series Land Cruiser in our fleet.
That's
And
awesome.
whenever whenever it comes in, I'm like, please let me work on it. They're like, nope, you're not touching this thing. I'm like, why not? And they're like,
That's so funny.
nope. I'm like,
Yeah,
come on, just throw me a bone. Come on, I want to work on it.
that's funny.
But they're like,
I was
no.
I was in the Marine Corps. I think that's probably one of the first times that I got to get up close and personal with an up armored Land Cruiser. Well, it definitely was I was over in Okinawa, and they had a few on base that were I wasn't even into Land Cruisers at the time. I think I just thought they were kind of cool, but they had the technical like mount in the back, so they had like a machine gun mounted up in the back. And
Yeah,
I remember walking back from like the chow hall, and there was like four of them parked on base, and I'm sure there's some uh special operation guys that were just ripping them around Okinawa doing some training and stuff. But I got to see those, and I was like, man, that thing's sick. Those are so cool. And that's when I learned that, like, I was kind of curious what those are, and I think I later kind of looked into them. And again, it wasn't anything, I wasn't into Land Cruisers really at the time, but it was like the first time that I learned that old like boxy, body of theirs is like a brand new like 20, whatever, it was 2018 I guess at the time, or 2016 at the time. And so it was like a
yeah,
2016 brand new truck, but like interior has like crank windows, and like there's barely a radio in it. Most of them, they might have AC. Like, again, like going back to the functionality part of stuff. Like, I think that's just such a cool. It's not comfortable, but I think just the functionality part is like super cool. I like that utilitarian part of it.
yeah. I always get a kick out of those memes that you see floating around on Instagram every so often that has like a 79 series pickup, and it says for a regime change on a budget.
Yeah, absolutely, absolutely. I love that. Yeah. That's awesome. I'll have to send you a picture of it. There's a company called Warm and Fuzzy, but they made a shirt recently, and it has a 40 series on the back with the technical. And it's like the front like window is like chopped off of it, and it's somewhere in like, I don't know, some third world country, but they're just ripping around like you know doing so. Oh, this company too, Toyota's of War. They make some really
Oh
cool
yeah.
merch. Um, I love their stuff. I got a bunch of their stuff.
Yeah. Um, just trying to. So, what would be like another bucket list trip that you'd want to go on?
So Colorado again, like we only spent like 6 7 days there, um, you know, traveling around. So I'd love to go back there and do some other parts of it. We did the Alpine Loop last year.
Yeah.
This year we're gonna go back to Colorado, but we're gonna do like the northern part of it. And I think what we're gonna do this year, we have a little bit bigger of a group, but we're gonna just kind of find a base camp out of, and then kind of push out from there and do some trails around. Um, that part, and just kind of last year we pretty much got up every morning, cooked a hasty breakfast, got in the rigs, and just kind of beat feet down the trail. And I think this year with the size group that we're going with, and then some of the guys are bringing their trailers as well. We're just going to try and find a base camp that we can, kind of push out of. And if somebody doesn't want to go wheeling that day,
Yeah.
they can just hang out at camp and, relax. So we'll do that this year. But then, man, Utah is a huge one. Like, I'd love to go to Utah and do some stuff out there. I'd love to, explore out there. I went to Moab when I was a kid, but it wasn't like for wheeling or anything. We just kind of went out to
Yeah.
go visit somewhere, and I just remember that being super cool. Um, and then I think one of the biggest ones that's going to obviously take a long time, and I'll probably have to be retired or strike, hit the lotto and not have to work, is the Pan American Trail.
Yeah.
I ever since I saw the guys on Toyota World Runners, doing that, man, that was such a cool, just inspirational journey that they went on, and it was like seeing that is just like lifetime, memories that they're creating. I'm out in my field and bugs are flying into my thing. I'm sorry. Um, but yeah, do, doing the Pan American would be super cool. I've talked to again my two buddies Chuck and Derek. We've talked about going to Australia and renting a couple rigs over there and just spending a couple weeks out
Yeah.
there, exploring that. And then I had another buddy who just came back from Scotland not too long ago. Him and his wife went out there for their delayed honeymoon, and they spent, I think it was like around like a week. They rented a Defender and they went out and they camped and did that. That looked amazing too. So like maybe Europe is
Yeah.
another one on the list. And then I'd say probably the last one, and this is going to sound weird, but I can't remember the guy. He's on YouTube, but he goes on these like crazy adventures, like to all sorts of different countries, and he'll go on these like random side quests. But he went to Afghanistan and he essentially hitchhiked across Afghanistan, and it was such a shocking video to watch because like uh maybe I'm biased to how I think they would treat Americans, but they were, man, it was like so everybody was so welcoming, and they like brought them into their house, and everybody was offering them to eat, and like
Yeah.
if you didn't eat with them it was like almost disrespectful and stuff. And um he made a video going through like this like pass, like this mountain valley pass, and like one of the truckers was like, hey man, you got to come with me, like if you're not a local, like it might get weird or whatever. So he opted in with this truck driver, and they went across Afghanistan for like a good while, and it looked like a cool time. And so I texted one of my buddies. I was like, yeah, and he was deployed to Afghanistan. I was like, what do you think about a trip to Afghanistan? We'll go find like a really crappy like Hilux or something because they're a dime a dozen over there. We'll just buy a Hilux for a week or so, and then we can ditch it somewhere or something. I don't know, but yeah, I think that'd be cool. That'd make for a cool story when you're an old guy.
Yeah. I don't know if you know of them, but there's this couple. Their names are Cohen and Karen, but they're Dutch, and they put out a book a while ago, or they put out several books, but only one book in English. But they bought a 40 series Troopy, a BJ 40 series
Is
Troopy.
it the
Or
blue
I think
one?
it was no, it was their current one is like a grayish color. I do want to have
Okay.
the. I know who you're talking about with the blue one. I do want to have them on the podcast, but I don't know how to get a hold of them.
Yeah.
But their first one was this yellow flapped out BJ 47 Troopy, and
Oh,
they
that's
just
awesome.
they started in the Netherlands, and they went across Europe and into Eastern Europe, Asia. This is like right at they started in 2003, and so it was like right at the
Oh
beginning of
wow.
the wars, and they were going
Yeah.
into uh, Iran, Pakistan, a lot of the stands they were going into,
Yeah.
and they were like, and I asked them, I'm like, so were you guys afraid when this was going when you're doing this because it was right in the middle of those wars? And they were like, you know what? Most of the people there, they would say, we don't say death to America, death to Americans. We have no problem with them. It's the extremists that are
Yeah.
saying all this stuff and
Yeah.
all this. And I'm like, And when they went into Iran, and I was just like, oh my goodness, you're going right through Iran and Iraq and Afghanistan and all this other stuff. And they were like, the people who were there, they were the nicest people. And again, they would invite you in to have dinner with them, and if you said no, they're like, "What's up? Come on,
Yeah,
we're
yeah,
inviting
it's
you into
almost
our house."
disrespectful. Yeah,
And they were just like the people themselves were the nicest people. Um, and that yellow BJ-47 Troopy is now in the Land Cruiser Heritage Museum in Salt Lake.
man, that's another bucket list place I gotta go to. I've seen that place all over and all over social media, and I'm like, I could probably spend 3 days just walking through there and like reading
Yeah,
all the stuff about all this, especially because they have all the just different unique models that were there or that have been offered, and a bunch of stuff that obviously can't even be driven on the road here. It's just over there as a museum piece. Super, super cool. Have you been
yeah.
there?
I've been to the older location, or the last location, the old location, but
Okay.
not the new location.
Okay.
Um,
Yeah.
the and when I was there, I was just like a kid in a candy store looking at all the 40s, and I'm like
Yeah.
just giddy. And the one that I really like the most is the one vehicle in the whole world that has driven on, because there's been vehicle brands that have driven on every continent, but there's only one vehicle, and it's a Land Cruiser, and it's in the museum, that has put
That's so
wheels down on every
on
continent.
every single continent. That's so cool. I didn't know that. That's
And
super cool.
and it's Kurt Williams was part of it, um, Expedition 7, and they they bought these Australian spec 70 series Land Cruisers, and some of them were pickups, some of them were Troopies, and I think there was 7 of them, but only one of them had actually put wheels down on every single continent, and they
That's
have that
awesome.
one in the museum. And it's just like, okay, that is really cool.
Yeah,
And I
I
get,
mean, that's the kind of that's the kind of stuff that like when you see somebody else with the Land Cruiser and you give the nod and they don't really give you the nod back. You're like, okay, like you drive it because it's got the badge on it. But I think the guys that like know the history behind it, that's super cool. That I'm learning that kind of stuff even till this day.
yeah, yeah. Well, we're right at nearly an hour. Um, do you have any
Yeah.
final thoughts for us?
No, man, I appreciate you having me on. I think it's cool you're doing this. I was pretty thankful that you reached out about it. I hope that maybe we can reconnect in the future at some point. And I hope this podcast blows up, and I hope it just keeps growing. I think I see a lot of the stuff that goes on in the automotive community, and some of it makes me sad, but obviously stuff like this makes me pretty happy that there's still cool stuff going on, and people are connecting and talking face to face, and just using this platform as a cool method of communication. I think's awesome.
Yeah, it's kind of interesting going back to hoping the podcast blows up. I've always kind of had like about 100 to 150 uh, streams or downloads or app plays or whatever per episode. But
Yeah,
uh, your your counterpart, Fabian, he's like, "Where's the video link?" And I'm like, "I, dude, I don't want to hear myself talk, let alone see myself on a video." And he's like, "Well,
yeah,
because a lot of people have been asking about the video," and I'm like, "Oh, okay." And so I put the video up, and it's had like well over 4,000 streams um,
that's
since I
awesome.
did that.
That's super
I'm
cool.
like, okay,
That's
I
awesome.
guess I'm putting the videos up now.
Yeah,
uh,
absolutely. Yeah, that's super cool. I like that. I think that's awesome. That was to your point of not listening to yourself. I think the one that you messaged me off the first time was that that post that I had put on my story. It was after I had done a bunch of like different stories of like doing something with a roof rack, and I realized that at the beginning of every single one I said like and I
yep.
took a picture of myself and I was like, I gotta stop saying like right before all this. And it's the same thing. I hate going back and listening to myself on these on any sort of post and stuff. And it's I've been meaning to get into YouTube and start documenting this motor swap that I've been doing and just some other
Yeah.
stuff. And um, but anytime I record myself, I'm just like, man, I hate listening to myself. It's just something you got to get over though. But it's funny.
Yeah. And I caught myself saying, "All right, welcome to." I'm like, "Okay, you're so full of American cheese, it's ridiculous." And so I'm like trying to find a different way to intro each episode.
No, I
Um,
like it. You gotta have like your signature onboarding.
well, I do have a signature send off, and it kind of goes by something that we talked about earlier. But at the end of every episode, I say the mountains are calling and I must go. Just
There you
because
go.
I sometimes I just need to go into the mountains just to kind of decompress and like we were saying
Absolutely.
earlier, to feel closer to a heavenly Father or to God or whatever, and just be at peace.
Yeah,
So,
absolutely. I like it. I think that's a perfect place to end too. So I appreciate it.
all right. Well, Ben, thanks for taking the time out of your day to talk to me, and it was a
Yeah,
great
likewise.
conversation. All right,
Thanks, Dan. I
we'll talk to
appreciate
you
it.
later. Yep, we'll talk to you
Alrighty.
later. Bye.
Thanks for listening to this episode of the Classic Land Cruisers podcast. As always, remember to go to reefmonkey.com to get your Classic Land Cruiser podcast merch. Bring your adventure home with inlowgear.com, your source for custom Land Cruiser apparel and merchandise, where adventure becomes art, designed for the road. Again, this episode was brought to you in part by Redline Land Cruisers, Save Your F, by Manafree, your one-stop shop for Land Cruiser parts and service, by Valley Hybrids and Terrain Tamer North America. As for me, the mountains are calling and I must go.